What happens to the child whose words fall into silence? The one who learns to speak in whispers because no one is listening. Today we're reconnecting with that part of ourselves who never had their story properly heard. When I was a child, I would often find my mother staring blankly out the window, physically present, but mentally unreachable. I was desperate for connection, only to watch her eyes slowly refocus, as if returning from a place far away. Growing up with a mother who suffered from undiagnosed schizophrenia, I learned early that my emotions, needs, and very existence sometimes vanished into the crowded landscape of her mind. The voices in her head were often louder than mine. I developed a particular skill that many children of mentally ill parents master: becoming invisible when necessary and fiercely independent always. I learned to build myself small, to take up less space, to silence my needs before they could be dismissed. In my series, Releasing Jacqueline, I shared how my mother had originally wanted to name me Jacqueline. A random nurse commented that the name was too long, so she chose Judith instead. For years afterward, she would beg me to change my name. What I didn't share fully was how this created a profound split in my inner child. There was Judi, the resilient, capable girl who survived by adapting to an unstable environment. And there was Jacqueline, the imagined daughter my mother wanted, the unfulfilled potential, the girl who might have been loved differently. Each time my mother would say, "You should change your name to Jacqueline," my inner child heard, "You are not enough as you are." What I came to understand later in life is that my inner child didn't just disappear. She became my protector. When my mother's illness made her unpredictable, that small, watchful part of me developed hypervigilance. She learned to read the subtle shifts of my mother's mood, to anticipate emotional storms, to navigate safely through the unpredictable landscape of our home. This child part never got to just be a child. She became a guardian, a miniature adult, a weather forecaster of emotional climate. When I began photographing my mother in the assisted living home, something unexpected happened. As I looked at her through my viewfinder, I suddenly saw her through the eyes of my inner child again, but now with adult compassion and understanding. In that moment, both the adult me and the child me were seen. The guardian child who had spent a lifetime being vigilant was finally witnessed. One of the most profound wounds of children with emotionally unavailable parents is the loss of voice. When your emotional needs are consistently unmet, you learn to stop expressing them. When your reality is denied, you begin to doubt what you know to be true. My inner child lost her voice because speaking the truth, "Mom, you're scaring me," or "Mom, I need you," rarely produced the comfort or security she needed. Instead, she learned to comfort herself, to become her own parent far too early. During my photography sessions with my mother, I discovered something unexpected. As I encouraged her to express herself, to write her notes, to speak freely without judgment, I was simultaneously giving my inner child permission to do the same. By creating a space where my mother's voice was honored, I inadvertently created space for the voice I had silenced so long ago. Here's a simple practice that helped me begin healing my inner child. It's called the Inner Child Letter Exchange. Find a photograph of yourself as a child. Place the photo where you can see it clearly. Write a letter from your adult self to this child, addressing what you see in their eyes, what you know they needed but didn't receive, what you want them to know about their worth, how you will protect them now. Read the letter out loud to the photograph. Then write a response from your child self to your adult selves. Let the child express what they've been carrying, what they've been afraid to say out loud, what they need from you now. This practice creates a bridge between the wounded child you were and the nurturing adult you can become. The healing happens in that connection, in the act of finally being witnessed, protected, and heard by the most important person in your life, you. My mother's illness meant she could rarely hear my full voice. But I realized that my inner critic, the voice that told me I was never enough, wasn't just her voice internalized. It was also my inner child crying out to be seen. When I finally listened to that child, when I validated her experiences, acknowledged her pain, and honored her adaptations as brilliant survival mechanisms rather than flaws, the critic began to soften. In one of the photographs I took of my mother, she had written on a scrap of paper, "I want to be a good person and have people like me." When I saw this, my adult self understood her intention and limitation, and my inner child finally heard what she had always needed to know. That the emotional absent wasn't because I was unlovable, but because my mother was fighting battles I couldn't see or understand. I would now like to introduce some signs that your inner child needs healing. You might recognize these signals that your inner child is asking for attention. 1. Disproportionate emotional reactions to minor triggers. 2. People-pleasing behaviors that exhaust you. 3. Difficulty setting boundaries with others. 4. Fear of abandonment in relationships. 5. Perfectionism and harsh self-criticism. 6. Trouble expressing needs directly. 7. Chronic feelings of emptiness or not belonging. 8. Difficulty trusting others or yourself. 9. Self-sabotage when things are going well. 10. Feeling responsible for others' emotions. These aren't character flaws. They're adaptive strategies your inner child developed to navigate a world where their emotional needs weren't being met. By recognizing these patterns, you take the first step towards healing them. When working with your inner child, it can be helpful to create what I call an inner child timeline. This involves identifying key moments when your inner child first learned to hide their true feelings, experienced significant disappointment or betrayal from caregivers, developed specific protective mechanisms, felt truly seen or protected, even briefly, experienced joy despite challenging circumstances. By mapping these moments, you develop a more complete understanding of your inner child's journey. This isn't about dwelling in the past. It's about honoring the full story so you can write a new chapter. The healing journey with your inner child isn't about staying in the past. It's about integration, bringing that wounded part of yourself into your present life with compassion and understanding. My inner child, that quiet, watchful girl who learned to make herself small, now has permission to take up space in my life. Her hypervigilance has transformed into intuition. Her independence has become strength. Her ability to adapt has become resilience. And that name, Jacqueline, that once represented all I could ever be for my mother, I reclaimed it, not as my mother's unfulfilled wish, but as a part of my complex, whole self. Not a replacement for who I am, but an integration of all I've become. This week, I invite you to find a photograph of yourself as a child and simply sit with it. What do you see in those eyes? What would you say to that child if you could? Share one insight from your letter exchange in the comments below if you feel comfortable. If this healing journey resonates with you, subscribe and check out the full healing card deck available in my Etsy store, link in the description. I've created a special downloadable worksheet to accompany this video. If you're interested, simply write inner child in the comments and I'll respond by sending you one. It includes guided prompts for your letter exchange, an inner child timeline exercise, and reflection questions to deepen your healing process. It's a beautiful companion to the healing cards and will help you apply these insights to your own journey. Remember, healing your inner child isn't about blaming your parents. It's about becoming the parent you needed. Next week, we'll explore self-validation and how to trust your own experience, even when others couldn't validate it for you. Until then, be gentle with yourself, especially your youngest parts.